the Supreme Court recently struck down the lower court's order that Texas, I'm going to read the super chat shortly, that Texas has to remove the razor wire in order to allow the feds that is sent in by Biden to do what it is that they want to do when it comes to migrants. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications. If you see fit to continue to link up with a group of people that's going in the direction that you're going in, make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. We do some phenomenal things in there. And if you are a part of the Patreon, make sure you tap into the Discord. The link to the Discord is in the description of any of the most recent videos so that you can continue to line up with the people that's going in the direction that we're going in. Y'all ready to get started? Let's get it popping.
The Supreme Court ruling in favor of removing sharp razor wire installed by Texas and rivers along the border between U.S. and Mexico. The 5-4 vote now clears the way for federal agents to actually cut down the wire, which administration officials have called dangerous and inhumane. Our senior Washington correspondent, Devin Dwyer, joins me now. So, Devin, the ruling pretty much delivers a huge win for the Biden administration.
At least temporarily, Kira. This is a big deal for the Biden administration and that showdown between Texas Governor Greg Abbott and the federal government as the nation is experiencing this crisis of unlawful immigration at the border. This deals with a 29-mile stretch of border in Texas along the Rio Grande, which you just showed some pictures of. And here's the order that says the federal government can move forward with clearing away this razor wire, concertina wire that was installed by the state of Texas. Now, the federal government, which has the authority of overseeing immigration policy, of course, federal border agents there, said that this wire was getting in the way of their duties. They said that they did not want it there. They said it was dangerous and inhumane. The Biden administration argued in court, Kira, that this was infringing on federal authority to execute immigration policy. Texas said that this was necessary, that the border is being overrun. It's imposing costs on their state. All of that dispute is still being litigated in court. But today, the Supreme Court said, in the meantime, the federal government can move forward with removing this wire, reclaiming its control of that land, and that Texas will continue to have to argue its case in court. And it's a very active case in what is now becoming a very big dispute as the country grapples with this immigration crisis, Kira.
So let me summarize it for you from a C student's perspective. Texas is battling in the court, which currently the ruling is that in the Supreme Court, the federal government has the authority to take down a razor wire that Texas and Governor Greg Abbott advocated for and installed in order to control. Again, you got to remember, guys, it doesn't mean that the borders are completely closed as far as you being able to legally get here. It means that we have control over where you get into the country and what is coming inside and in and out of our country. So you can't just cross over and walk over here without any kind of understanding. And remember, they're coming over here illegally. This is not legally coming over here. These are people that are just walking in here and prancing in here illegally, and we don't know who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then we have to use our resources, specifically Texas, have to use their resources in order to get them, process them, and get them to wherever it is that they're going and allow for them to be able to do whatever it is that they're doing. And so the Supreme Court sided with the Biden administration and said, listen, we want to make sure that we can open up our borders and let the federal government do what they've been doing. They haven't proven themselves to be worthy of this responsibility. Texas has taken up the mantle, and we should all give Texas a round of applause right now. Texas is taking up the mantle and doing what they have to do for the American people. And we still face an opposition at every angle from the Biden administration and from the federal government in order to leave our borders open.
Supreme Court is now allowing Border Patrol agents to remove razor wire installed by Texas along the U.S.-Mexico border. The wire was put up to discourage illegal crossings. The Biden administration argued it hindered Border Patrol agents' ability to process migrants who are already in the country. In a 5-4 vote Monday, the justices overturned a lower court ruling preventing officials from taking it down. CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya Galvez joins us now. Camilo, tell us why did the administration, why did the Supreme Court side with the Biden administration?
Good evening, John, from the Texas border town of Eagle Pass. This is at the center of this legal fight between the Biden administration and Texas Governor Greg Abbott. This is one of the sections, John, of the U.S.-Mexico border where Texas National Guard soldiers, some of whom you can see behind me, have been setting up and assembling razor wire to repel migrants from swimming across the Rio Grande and entering the U.S. illegally. By suspending this lower court ruling, the Supreme Court is saying that the Biden administration can now remove that razor wire that Texas has put in place to process migrants on U.S. soil. This
coming over here illegally. That is the key word. Coming over here illegally. So then y'all have to ask yourself this question again. Why is the Biden administration fighting so feverishly? And I mean feverishly. They are going into the court system. They fighting. They clawing. They gnawing. Why is it so important for them to fight so feverishly to leave our borders open? That don't strike you as weird? That's not troubling for you guys? You're not like feeling a little type of way for that, for them to just be able to leave things open for where you can come in? We are supposed to be the most prosperous nation in the entire world. But we can't and refuse to secure our own borders. How is that a thing? What's up, baby? How is that possible?
was a brief order that did not include a legal justification, John, but we do know that the administration had said and argued to the High Court that this razor wire was obstructing and impeding Border Patrol operations, including efforts to process migrants who are already on American soil and to respond to medical emergencies. It's important to note, John, that once migrants get into the middle of the Rio Grande, they're technically on U.S. soil, and Border Patrol has no option but to process them and determine what those migrants should end up happening to those migrants, I should say, whether they should be deported, released into the country, or detained for the adjudication of their cases. Texas, for its part, John, has said that this effort is designed to deter illegal border crossings.
So what happens now? Can Texas challenge the decision, or is this it?
This is in no way an end to this legal fight between the administration and Texas over this specific issue of the razor wire, John. This will suspend a lower court ruling, but an appeals court in New Orleans is still reviewing this case, John, and could very well side with Texas in another decision that we could get any day now, and the administration could eventually be again prevented from setting up or relocating and removing this razor wire, I should say. And so Texas still has some options here legally.
And very brief.
A lot of times we'll say that our vote don't count and that it doesn't really matter who gets in the office and things like that. But the reality is this is the reality, is that our president is the one that ultimately selects who our justices are, right? And the decisions that those justices make affect what our children is going to live through and what the standards in the country and the community is going to be. And so a lot of times we don't think that it matters for us to participate in the process, whether it be our elected officials or even when it comes to what's happening locally, right? If you guys didn't have Greg Abbott, what do you think that Texas would look like right now? I mean, over the last few years, we've had our borders literally overrun. It's almost like they're making up for lost time for when we had the pandemic going on. I do got a stream deck, but they all at the studio. Shout out to you, Time Out. What do you think that Texas would look like if we didn't have some level of, the people of Texas wasn't responsible enough to actually elect people in the government or elect people in their local election that's working on the best interests of not only Texas, but this entire country? Greg Abbott is really being a lightning rod, and he's being a reflection of what this entire country needs to stand for. Now, what would happen if they didn't participate in the process that ultimately put him into office? What would Texas look like? What would this entire country look like? I'm just saying. You have to get active, and not just for the things that's the worst for us. You have to get active and not just the things that's the worst for us. How many of us would pretty much be oblivious to what's going on at the border if over the last year plus I haven't been beating this into y'all head almost every single day and keeping y'all informed of what's going on at the border? You do know that most of your friends are uninformed because they're not a part of what we do over here at the Millionaire Morning Show, right? You do know that most of your people is over here still leaning into liberal principles. And I'm not even talking about their liberal voting. I'm talking about the principles that anybody can do anything that they want, and we shouldn't have any kind of structure, but we should have more oversight from the federal government to determine what is supposed to happen in our own homes. Earlier last year, Eric Adams was sitting here having a conversation, and I didn't forget. Eric Adams was having a conversation, and he was saying that maybe we should have people and incentivize people to let migrants come into their own homes. You telling me that I won't even let a person that I know spend a night because I ain't got time for the BS. But they're trying to incentivize you. Earlier this year, over in New York, this is the conversation that Eric Adams was having, to have you have people laid up in your own house that you don't even know, you don't know where they came from, and you don't know what their background is, to go and stay in your house, and you live with them, and they incentivize you to do that. And people was actually taking that into consideration because they so desperate and they are under duress that people often at times make the worst decision for themselves when they're in a financial duress situation. You actually considered it. It was people in the chat that was actually considerate, saying, well, it depends on how much they pay. How much is your safety worth? How much is your liberty worth? How much is your peace of mind worth? How much is your family worth? How much is your future, the future of the people that come after you, worth? You so selfish that you won't even take into consideration what the hell is happening all around you. And the only thing that we have to lean on is your own selfish motives, because you don't think about nobody but yourself. Don't you know the decisions that you make that's worse for yourself ultimately affect the people that surround you? Every decision that you make that's bad for yourself, you put somebody else under duress, or you take time away from somebody else that's supposed to be doing what they're supposed to do. So because we're not responsible enough to put people in office that actually stand for the principles that we stand for, but instead we keep evaluating them based off of their presentation layer. I don't like him because he said he want to grab women in their coochie. And I don't care. Listen, your homeboy is doing it the other day, and you ain't trip off of him. Y'all just ran a train on a chick the other day, and you ain't had no standards for that. But all of a sudden, you want to have a higher moral compass instead of paying attention to what this person is actually doing in your best interest as far as national security. Resume in 4 years was better than any president that came before us. Renegotiated NAFTA, tariffs on China, no new wars, brought all of our troops home, fought to close off our borders, got finessed 100% and was met with resistance at every single turn, even from people within his own party. And now we sitting here and we voted for a person that y'all said that y'all was going to vote for based off of the fact that he said that if you don't vote for me, you're not black. And you went for it. You went for the old rope-a-dope. And then I'll be having people come up on this platform sitting here talking to me and saying, well, yeah, Biden did a great job. What about when he introduced the crime bill? What was that, 1994? What about in 2004 or 2007 when he was sitting here saying that there's no country that could ever operate the way that they're supposed to operate without closed borders? What about when I presented y'all with that evidence? Y'all forgot about that. All of a sudden, you want borders open because you sheep. And you got wolves around you that's basically leading you to the slaughter for their own benefit, and you think that it's cool. Listen, this man can't even manage his own son and his own family. Hunter Biden can't even get himself together. You telling me a man that can't even manage his own family correctly can manage the entire country, including our borders? I'm just saying, if we just gonna have a whole conversation, you can't even get Hunter to get off of coke. They just recently, just a few months ago, I don't know if y'all forgot about it, but they just a few months ago was sitting here having a conversation about how they found coke or drugs inside of the White House. Inside of the White House. They recently just released documents that said that they found coke on Hunter Biden's gun holster. You telling me you can't manage your own family successfully, but you supposed to be able to manage what it is that we got here on the United States of America. Meanwhile, deficit out of control. Inflation, crazy. Unemployment is low, but not for the jobs that you really want. Not for the jobs that you really want. Underemployment, what about that number? Still being bamboozled, ain't you? Still being bamboozled, ain't you? All right, cool. All right, cool. I got you. I got you. I got you. Don't worry about it. We gonna get there. Meanwhile, over in Chicago, Brandon Johnson, who just was basically documented as having a panic attack and in the hospital 8 months into his tenure, is outlining the new migrant plan.
Some 34,000 asylum seekers have arrived here in Chicago, and tonight there's no indication that the number of new arrivals is likely to slow anytime soon. Today, Mayor Johnson held an impromptu meeting of suburban leaders to outline a new plan of attack. A change in strategy from Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson for dealing with the steady arrival of migrants into the city. A closed-door meeting held today between his office and 24 suburban leaders, including Burr Ridge Mayor Gary Grasso.
He's looking for increased spending and increased money and support for shelters and services so he can better house the migrants in and within Chicago.
Part of Johnson's plan includes more reliance on state and federal resources. No new shelter beds will be provided. Instead, beds will be filled as migrants exit, which will put more pressure on asylum seekers to find permanent housing faster.
They
provided help to migrants who got here in October or earlier by assisting them with housing for 3 months. After that time, they are on their own. For people who came to Chicago after October, they aren't providing the same help.
Complicating the migrant issue, the arrival of extreme winter weather. Tonight's forecast calling for a wintry mix of rain and snow and ice.
What we are seeing is that it's still getting colder out. It's wetter and rainier out. People are still arriving, not just in Chicago, but all throughout the suburbs.
Johnson's new plan also includes a greater focus on getting work permits for asylum seekers, some of whom may now be living here legally longer than the law allows.
The question I get is, are these people legal? Yes, they are, but at some point, if they don't go through the process, they're not legal anymore, and it's been some time after all.
In the meantime, Governor Pritzker is again questioning Chicago's handling of the migrant situation. He said he is, quote, deeply concerned about Mayor Johnson's plans to pull back on new building and new shelters, and says the Johnson administration has not told the state what it needs.
The city has not told the state where they would like us to put our resources to build new shelters or help them build new shelters. So we can't help if they don't identify those locations. And we need to make sure that we're not ending shelter capacity, as the city is now planning to do.
I can't even lay this at Brandon Johnson's feet right now. I'm not even going to cap. This all just seems like a conspiracy to have this guy fail at the highest level. And I'm not saying that he's doing a good job or that he's doing his job correctly, because I think that he still needs to manage the best interests of the residents of the city. But this is clearly a finesse. If this is not a finesse, I don't know what you can call a finesse. This is clearly. So you telling me, we've seen him sit here and say, hey, we need more state and federal funding, which I don't agree with. They need to basically divest themselves from being a sanctuary city in the first place. But you're going to sit here up here and tell me that this man is not begging for resources, which you should not be building any more shelters in the first place. But you sit here and tell me, I don't know where to send the money because, they haven't really identified anything else. Stink. Just stinks to the highest of heavens. Just stink. Stinks. All of it is a finesse. Him sitting there with his slick back hair. You know what I see? Honestly. Let me be quiet. Let me just be quiet. Let me just be quiet.